Hi there, let's talk about finding targeted keywords that your audience is actually typing into Google when they're trying to look for a solution to their problem. So you know that feedback is important for success. It's not something I need to say. And you can get real far without, asking for anything from anybody, but at some point you're probably going to want to seek some insights or for some new ideas or just to, be sure that you're targeting the right sort of things for your audience and whatever else, then how do you get SEO feedback though? I mean, have you ever tried that? Like SEO doesn't really seem like something you would ever try and get feedback on. But as weird as it might sound, it's the same as trying to give feedback for anything else, right? You just ask. It's just that you probably never thought to ask. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask our reader by building a really simple form inside of a WordPress website. And let's get started. What you're going to need to build this are a few ingredients. It's really simple. You're going to need a forms plugin. I use Fluent Forms because I just happened to, I think probably 2 or 3 years ago or something, I got a lifetime deal to the plugin, so I just use it for everything. But you could use Gravity Forms, Ninja Forms, whatever, WP Forms, whatever you prefer. I'm going to use Fluent Forms for this video, so if you want to follow along completely, you got to use that plugin. I also use Generate Blocks Pro because it allows me to make it look nicer. So just like you see on the screen right now, that cool gradient inside of this sort of container here is made possible by Generate Blocks Pro. And then, of course, you need WordPress because, well, these are all WordPress plugins and my site runs on WordPress. Okay, so first thing though, need to talk about privacy because you're building a form. You're building something that a person visiting your website is going to fill out, and you don't know where that person could be coming from. Could be somebody from Europe somewhere, somebody from the US, Canada, or anywhere. And you're going to need to basically follow privacy laws for the world. And unfortunately, they vary quite a bit all around the world. And probably most famous is GDPR. It's how Europe's fighting privacy for their citizens. And so for this guide, I'm just going to build a really, really simple form, like literally one text box and a submit button, nothing more. And it's also not going to store anything about the reader, the submitter, like IP address or geolocation, none of that stuff. All of that, when you set up your Fluent Forms, turn all that stuff off. I just highly recommend that you do that. There's probably not a lot of reason for you to store it anyways, and you're probably not going to actually put it to use like a full CRM might do. So all you want is what people are typing into Google to find content that you want to create. So don't forget privacy. Be careful. Fight that urge to ask for more than you need. And also don't overthink things. A really, really simple form is going to have much higher conversion rates, and that's what you want. You actually want people to fill it out. You don't want to have a form that once you start asking for things that maybe feel a little bit private to people, like email, it's not personal. It's not like personal information, but it's one of those things that you guard a little bit at least, right? You don't want to just, let me just put my email address into any old form you see on the internet. No. So you shouldn't ask for it, especially if you're not going to use it, and especially if you don't want to store it, because then you have to get consent and this kind of stuff. So just keep it simple. This form is going to be one line so that I can actually get people to fill it out and send me the information that I want. Okay, collecting the keywords that people actually type into Google. Well, I'm just going to show you right up front what it looks like. It looks like this. This box that's around the form is from Generate Blocks. And this is just a paragraph of text where I sort of interrupt the reader. I say, hey, you got a second? because I'm curious. As someone interested in discovering real keywords, what would you search for in Google to learn about it? Now, I worded it this way, get some attention, and then I say, as someone interested in, and then discovering real keywords. Now, that's because this form is actually for this article. This article is about finding the SEO keywords that people are typing into Google, right? So if you're interested in discovering real keywords, what would you search for in Google for it? And you just type it right here, hit this little button right here, and it comes to me, and I can craft or optimize this article to make it better. So that's what it looks like. And later I'm going to run through how to build and design that form. But I want to jump down to here. When you get to a part later on in this video where I'm talking about the styling, you can copy this here to use, so it's easier for you to follow along. Okay, so what do you do with this information once you have it? You should ultra optimize your articles, right? Based on real world, data, the keywords that people are really actually typing in. And I really want you to kind of really stop and think about this for a second, because you might, you don't gloss over this. Like, this is the type of information that is like literally digital gold. So, when you're receiving things like this, like even the most expensive keyword research tools in the world can't provide you this. They're doing all kinds of math and aggregation, all kinds of stuff to try and figure out what are the most common words. But if you're getting this from your audience, the people who are already kind of finding you through whatever means, and then they are telling you what they would type into Google, you're getting a very focused keyword combination, probably like a long tail keyword in most cases. That's one, it's from your audience, and two, it's something that people actually type into Google, not what tools are predicting people are typing in. So what you do is you basically take that and you plug it into Phrase, like a tool like Phrase, where it'll help you optimize your article. So you're not spending a ton of time, doing the research for that keyword and finding out what your current article might be missing, or what you're going to need to produce a new article around that keyword. And so I highly recommend you just use Phrase. Take that keyword that was sent to you by one of your readers. If you feel like it's a good keyword, of course, don't just take them all, of course. But the ones that you feel like, ooh, that's a good keyword, I didn't think about that, let me take that one, plug it into Phrase, get a lot of the research done for you, and then it'll also show you all the little topical keywords and things like that you need to kind of make sure are woven into your article to make sure that Google is aware that that's what your article is really about. And so those are the magical powers from this system. It's a really awesome system that will help you, win some SERP rankings and defeat your competition, blah, blah, blah. Basically, I mean, you're probably going to start out ranking your competition because there's a really huge chance that your competition is not doing these types of things. Of course, I can't guarantee anything like that because, SERP rankings and stuff like that are just based off of way too many factors. But this is one of the few that you can actually control. The quality of your article is important. I'm going to add something here into this. It's not on the screen right now, but when you're writing your articles or updating your articles, you really need to pay attention to the intent of the reader. What is it that you're finding out here what it is that they're typing into Google, but you need to stop and kind of like put yourself in their shoes. Like when they land on your page based on what they typed into Google, what is it that you think that they really, really need? Give them the fullest answer, the most thorough answer, and also as succinctly as you can. Don't be overly wordy and fluff up the article just because you feel like you need more words. But if your article is the one that provides the best answer to that query that you got from them, by the way, then you're going to start ranking for that. Google wants to surface the best quality articles. There's going to be some other things that go into it, but you want to make sure that you're answering the very reason that person is even on your article to begin with. So Don't forget that. Always remember you're writing your article for somebody, and that somebody is there for a reason. Answer that reason, whether it's a product or a service or information, whatever it is, the reason that they're, give it to them, and you'll do great. And then you'll repeat all this whenever it makes sense. So what you're going to find is as people send you more and more feedback based on what they're going to type into Google, you're going to realize that a lot of people are typing the same things. And so you don't need to keep optimizing your article whenever you see the same terms sent to you. But every once in a while, you'll get a new idea that just is really, it's really interesting because it's something where you can, I didn't think about that. Maybe it could be a whole new article, or it could be not a whole tangent, because you want to be careful not to water down your articles to prevent, to where Google won't be able to know precisely what your article is about. You don't want your article to end up being kind of loosely about 3 or 4 or 5 topics, and meaning that your article is going to be middle of the road for 5 topics instead of the top for 1. So be careful with that. But whenever you get something new from a reader that you haven't seen before, think about it, see if it fits with the current article. If it does, go back into phrase, use that new keyword that you got from your reader, and then optimize your article again carefully. You don't have to fully take advantage of all the topical keywords and everything, but as long as you're molding it a little bit towards that new keyword that you got from the reader, you're going to do something great. And sometimes it isn't meant for an existing article, but you can use that keyword to build a whole new page or a whole new article dedicated to that new keyword that you got from the reader. Okay, so that's why we're going to do it and what we're doing here. Let's just jump into Fluent Forms here real quick. So this is Fluent Forms. Let's see if I can zoom in just a little bit more, because I realize I'm recording this at 4K. So here's what you get when you basically create a new form. And I'm just going to show this once real quick and then flip over to the form that I have done already. But you click create form and you get this. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a simple text field only, right? Oops, you can't drag and drop it. click the simple text. And what you end up with is a single line text field with a submit button. Okay, so I don't want to use that. So let's just cancel that, and we'll come down to, I call it the first party data form, and I'm going to edit this one to show you. So you can see it says, what would you type into Google? Let me click on this field so I can show you some of the customization on it. These labels and stuff, you can label it however you want. These are just more or less internal. I hide the label, that's why you don't see anything around it. I hide that label because I'm providing the, in a sense, the sort of a label, right? If you remember from the view, let's see if I can get to it here. Oops. Down right here, you have a paragraph that kind of introduces the form, right? So there is where I have what is essentially a label of sorts. So I don't want a label showing up on the form itself, so I just hide that label. And of course it's required. You don't want somebody submitting empty forms. And then the advanced options, this is how you're going to make it look like a single line. Like here in the editor, it looks like it's 2 separate lines. But when you actually see it online, like you saw here, the submit button loads right there. And that's from the CSS code, but you have to do a couple of things to apply the correct CSS to the right places. And that means when you select that input field and you go down to advanced, inside of here, there is an element class. You want to make sure it says extra spaced. And then when you click on the submit button, you can change what the text is. Mine, I just made a little right arrow. I changed the colors and stuff like that. You can do all that as well. And then you go down to the advanced options, make sure the container class says top_merged. After that, make sure you save the form, and then we're going to go into settings and integrations and go over to custom CSS and JS. So this is where you're going to add the styling. And in this case, it's just me adding those three fields, those 3 entries, I guess, that you saw previously that you can copy and paste from right here. And in Fluent Forms, what they've done is every form has its own ID. In this case, Fluent Form ID 1, right? And it has this could be right here, ID. Instead of ID, I could have that be 1, like you see right here it says. You might add that. But if you leave it as ID, it will automatically, the FFID will automatically be replaced dynamically by Fluent Forms. It's just an easier way to keep it simple. Up to you how you'd prefer to do it. For this purpose, I just left it like this. So you might recognize a couple of things. Top merged, remember that? And extra spaced. It's this code here that makes it possible for that form to look like a single line. And then that's pretty much it. What you want to do is set up email notifications. This is pretty much by default. You can just, I think it might be turned off by default. Just turn it on, and then when you hit your settings, just change the name and title and stuff like that. What happens by default is when somebody enters their information, hits submit, or the keywords that they would type into Google, hits submit, it just gets sent to you in an email, and that's it. One thing I also would recommend is if you are on the form settings, if you go down, let's see, I think it's okay. It's not here. It's in the overall settings, and I can't show you that because of some of the things that you would see in the video that would compromise the security of my website. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that it's not actually storing entries in the database for each of these. Yep, that's where it is. So when you're in Fluent Forms, if you go down here into global settings, there is a place where you can tell the form not to store entries in the database on the website. And that's just because you don't really want them being saved there. Actually, let me take that back, because in this instance, you're only storing the keywords that they would type, so that would be fine. So disregard that, but think about it. If you try and build a form that does contain something like an email address or something like that. So for instance, in my form where you're signing up to be notified whenever I come up with a new guide like this, it will not store your email address and things like that in the entries database. It'll only keep it with the CRM, the customer relationship management side of things. And that way, if you ever decide that you want to unsubscribe, it can be totally removed easily. And therefore follows privacy laws and things like that. Okay, so that's how you set the form up. When you're on the website, and we'll go into the post editor here now, what happens is, this is way zoomed in, so it's kind of clunky here. Okay, so basically what you're going to do is this blue green gradient, to make it look nice, is generate blocks. In generate blocks, they call it a container. Basically, you just drop in a container, and then over in the options side, you can change the layout, typography, spacing, colors, all that kind of stuff. And I did all that to make it look like this. So I'm going to remove this for now. Then inside of it is just a paragraph where I just write, whatever it is that I think is interesting. And this is going to be unique per page that I drop this form on. So you might recognize that I named the form the Google first party data form, right? That's what this block brings in. This is the Fluent Forms block in WordPress, and I can just pick the form, and that will end up outputting it like you saw when we were viewing the post. And so what this does is it allows me to have a simple form that this content can be different based on the page that I'm on, so that I can kind of tweak it based on what type of information I'm trying to ask for. So if I'm on a different page, like maybe about Shortly AI, maybe this would say something like, as someone interested in Shortly, what would you type into Google to learn more about it? Or something like that, in hopes that somebody who sees it would give me some information on how I might make my site better for somebody looking for Shortly information. And so that's what it looks like in a nutshell. And that's how you set up a form to gather SEO keywords from just regular people reading your website, browsing along in the web and finding you from here and there and giving you some extra information to make your stuff better for everyone. So that's it for this guide. I hope you found something interesting about it, and if you did, please, like and subscribe and comment and all that good stuff. Commenting is the best, because it feeds the algorithm and helps this channel grow. If you look down in the notes, I have links to this page and any other products and stuff that I use in this, and I hope that you found it helpful. Until next time, take care.